Hey guys, welcome to Spilling the Boba Tea podcast. I'm Kennedy.
And I'm Sophie, and we're so excited to get to share with you guys today. With that said, let's get started.
Yeah. To start off our Homely Girl Summer, I have a fun question for you. If you could be friends with any celebrity, who would it be and why?
I don't know if this counts as a celebrity, but I would say Lauren Daigle. I just think that I would want to be friends with her because I love her personality and like her heart for music and people. So I feel like she would be a great person to get to know better and to become friends with.
Well, I would choose Kevin Hart because he's really funny, and I feel like hanging out with Kevin Hart would just be fun. Like, you can never have a bad time with him. He can bring you up when you're down. Also, he's really short, so I can finally be taller than him. No, he's not that much taller than me, but
Well, since we're on the topic of friends, finding good friends in today's world can be super hard and it's very time consuming. Challenging, there you go. So what do you look for when you're finding people who could be candidates for friends?
Ooh, fancy words. I feel like finding friends is really hard. Um, Especially when you lose a friend. I can say that I've lost really good friends that I thought were my best friends, and then they turn out to be a complete lie, and our whole relationship was just false. So you have to rebuild the trust with someone else in a new relationship. The best thing I could say is just praying about it, and then in First Thessalonians 5:11, therefore encourage one another and build each other up, just as in fact you're doing. So if they're not building you up and they're talking down upon you, then I don't want it. Like, what's the purpose of this? Y'all should both in a relationship, they say this a lot, y'all should both be on a spiritually similar level and mature, the same maturity level. If you have someone spiritually mature and then less spiritually mature, you'll be doing things that they think is weird, or they'll be doing things that you think are wrong.
Yeah.
In effect. So I feel like definitely praying about them and making sure y'all are spiritually on the same level and y'all are building each other up.
Yeah, and that kind of goes into my point as well, that I would look for somebody who is on the same level as me. So like, for example, if there was a person talking about someone who wasn't present, aka gossiping, then my friend would beat me in changing the subject of the conversation. Or we could have a great conversation about what God is doing in our lives without having any weird feelings attached to the topic. I would also look for people who love Jesus as much as me, for people who are honest and tell the truth in love. That's very important. Um, and for people who will make me better as a person and who will also benefit from spending time with me as well. And I think a good biblical example of what a good friendship looks like would be David and Jonathan in First Samuel. Their relationship it's not perfect, obviously, because we don't live in a perfect world, but they're very big on the brotherly love. And I feel like when we have friends, brotherly, excuse me, brotherly love and sisterly love are the main things that keep us together in friendships.
Okay, I didn't write this down, but I want to ask a question based on what you said. How do you remember to have that brother like or sister like love with someone else without wanting to drop kick them?
Hmm. Um, I would say that in every relationship that you have in life, there is always an opportunity for patience. I feel like God, yeah, I feel like God uses our relationships and the people in our lives to kind of push our limits. Because I know that there are some challenging friends that you're friends with them and they're really good people, but they also get on your nerves and they don't see eye to eye, or they just, there are some areas that you can't agree on. Um, and definitely that's where I think grace comes into effect, where you can just agree to disagree
Mm-hmm.
and not push the topic or like push your ideas or them pushing their ideas on you. But you can talk about it and you can have a civil conversation, but not have a full debate class about that.
Okay, so like you were saying, there's definitely a difference between good friends and bad friends. Want to build you up and tear you down. So how do you let go of friends who are tearing you down?
um, I think that you would have to love that person from a distance. So, what I think that means is that you would have to have a conversation with the said person, and try to resolve any conflict or bring to their attention the way that they're tearing you down. And if that doesn't work, then you have to kind of kindly end that friendship and move on. Um, and the biggest thing about that is that you cannot compromise. Um, you can't just say, "Hey, we can we can't hang out anymore, but feel free to give me a call or text anytime. Like, I'm available for you." Um, or continue to follow them on social media. That's another thing. Um, that gives an opportunity for temptation to come in, and to give you FOMO.
We love that.
And yeah, and to end up right where you started.
I'm definitely the person who like loves being friends with everyone. I'm like,
Mhm.
well, you may or may not be a bad person, but I want to be friends with you because I am here to build you up and help you get on the same level as me.
Mhm.
But then at the end, it's like me being teared down and being pulled down by them. A person once told me that if you're on a higher platform than them, like spiritually more mature or just more mature, period, and they're below you and you're trying to pull them up, well, it's a lot easier for you to be pulled down than being able to pull someone up.
Yeah.
You're gonna need a whole bunch of people to be able to pull someone up. And that's really where mentors come in. So determine whether or not you're their mentor or if you're their best friend.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely really hard when you have people bringing you down. And it's even harder when you have to kind of end those relationships because sometimes we get attached. So how do you recover from a bad friendship?
Losing a friend can be really hard. I feel like when we have bad friendships, we look at everyone the same. Like, oh well, if that person did this person's more likely going to do that,
Mm-hmm.
and then we don't trust anyone. And then we get be like all alone and feeling lonely, and like no one else is there for us.
Mm-hmm.
I would also like to say that in that time, in the season of you feeling alone, like you have no friends because you had to let go of all these bad friends because they were tearing you down. Luckily, you got a free friend named Jesus who's there 24/7.
Yeah.
Um, but on top of that, it definitely, for me at least, it took a bit to recover. I had to learn how to make new friends and base our relationship off of Jesus. Like, make sure that He was the main focus, and not only the main focus in my friendships. It's really hard because I'm easily pulled down. So I've had friends where we were both toxic to each other, and we were both being gossiping about each other, but then acting like best friends.
Mm.
And that's like another thing. Like when you're gossiping or thinking bad about the other person, and they're doing the same with you, it's probably not the best relationship, and you should probably like break up with your friend. Pretty much, just break up.
Yeah. Definitely before my friendships were God centered, they were more fun based than life based. So friends were really only good for hanging out, and I couldn't talk about the things that I was struggling with my friends. Um, and then when those friendships fell apart, I would often blame myself for being too upright or uptight or too spiritual. Um, but recovering from these friendships, at least for me, was a process of going to my spiritual leaders in life, and asking them what they thought about my situation. I remember one of my leaders told me, maybe God has allowed you to be alone so that you can realize that he wants to be your best friend. Maybe he wants your attention back because you've given your attention fully to your friends. And I think that a good verse to kind of hold on to when you're having that filter of going back into searching for friends is Proverbs 12:26, which says, "The godly give good advice to their friends, but the wicked lead them astray." So I think that in a season where you are by yourself and you're recovering from that friendship, just remember that God wants your full attention, and friendships can definitely be something that get in the way. I would even go as far as to say they can become your idols in life, and they can take your full attention away from God. That's what He really wants.
Yeah, I also want to add on to that real quick is to pray about the friends you're going, like before you go all in with a friend, make sure to pray about it.
Mhm.
And every decision you make, pray about it and make sure that what y'all are doing is biblical, um, and not toxic in any way. As Christians, we are told multiple different things about relationships,
Mhm.
but I want your opinion on and your biblical knowledge on, is it okay for teens to date?
Oh my gosh, I love this question. um, is it okay to date? As a teen, I would ask the question, are you ready to date? Because as Christians, we are dating to find the person we want to marry. That is the end goal. So I would ask a ton of self questions or self awareness questions beforehand. So, like, are you mature enough for that? Are you responsible enough for that? Do you know what to look for in a partner? These are like some of the questions I would ask myself before agreeing to date anyone. And also, if you're going to date someone, you should really date someone on your own level. You shouldn't be babysitting or mothering your boyfriend. So definitely make sure that they are on your level of maturity, faith, values, and morals, um, so that you're not being their mentor, but being able to be their best friend. So I would say yes, as long as you're ready for it. And just remember that dating isn't a game, dating is finding your partner for life.
Yeah. There's two different ways I would go about this. One, yes, for sure. One thing I think most relationships lack is Jesus.
Yeah.
Um, there are I have several friends who are Christians who are in relationships, but at the same time, they don't put Jesus first. He's just a hobby for them. I feel like as Christians, the Bible and Jesus and God, they should all go before the guy you're dating. For example, like before you hang out, text, call, even think about them, put God first. Do your quiet time, dive into the Word, say a little prayer here and there. But then also, no, if you're not ready to date, don't date because everyone else is dating, because you think it's like a reward
Yeah.
or it's like a crown or something. Like, hey, I have a boyfriend. Look at me. Um, in the Bible,
Corinthians.
Corinthians. I don't know why I forget to say that or forget how to pronounce it. Paul talks about in verse 7 how he wishes that everyone was single, and like it's easier to be single than it is to be in a relationship.
Yeah.
Because not only do you have to focus on yourself and your relationship with God, you have to focus on a whole other person,
Mm-hmm.
and making sure that y'all are equally mature enough spiritually,
Mm-hmm.
and making sure that if one falls, you give them biblical advice to help bring them back up. Yeah. And if you're not ready to date, you have to figure out how to break up with them without hurting their feelings, and it's going to be hard, especially in long relationships.
Yeah.
Breaking up with someone's hard. So like before you do date, make sure y'all are both ready for sure. Because if you're not, it's going to go downhill from there.
Yeah, and to add on to that, my answer would be yes and no, because if you're not ready to date, you have no idea what you're getting yourself into. And on top, like you said, on top of being responsible for yourself, you're responsible also for your relationship with God, and then you're responsible for your relationship with the person that you're dating. So if you cannot be on top of yourself at all, like if you cannot be on top of your basic self, then how can you be on top of your relationship with God? And then on top of that, how can you be on top of your relationship with the person? So I just think that if you're not ready for it spiritually, mentally, emotionally,
All of the above.
then my answer would be no. So continuing on the topic of relationships, we're talking about how if you're not ready for it, the answer is no. But when starting a relationship, I think one of the biggest topics is boundaries.
Ooh.
So when starting a relationship, should we set boundaries? I think that the answer is an absolute 100% yes. Boundaries are super important to any relationship, not just a romantic relationship, but also your relationship with your friends, your relationship with your parents, your relationship with your siblings, anybody that you have a relationship with, and even God has boundaries. Like, there is no other God before him. That's a boundary. So think of it like this. How close are you both willing to go towards the edge? Let's be real here. Sex before marriage is not only common, but it's a sin. Are you willing to let that happen between you? Are you willing to push the limit until there is long-lasting consequences for the both of you? And not even sex before marriage. Like, there is so many other things, like verbal abuse happens. Physical abuse happens. That's not just sex oriented. Um, There's also mental abuse and emotional abuse, which can all happen within a relationship without boundaries.
I've been in relationships where boundaries were the last thing I was thinking about. I was just so excited and so eager to date this person. I was like, those out the window. Like, I had the mindset of, well, Jesus forgives me of all my sins. So let's say if I go over that boundary, like, it doesn't really matter. Like, God's there. He'll forgive me eventually. Like, all I have to do is pray about it. There's been times where I went over the line, and then later that day, I couldn't barely breathe because, like, I thought what I was doing was okay, but then my soul and my spirit was like, "Girl, no, this isn't okay. Like,
Yeah.
you need to take several steps back. Like, you were far over that line." And my confidence was even lower because I was afraid of, well, what if he look at me the same way they look at someone else, or what if they're doing the same thing with me as with someone else? And then I became insecure about myself, and I was like, well, I wish a couple months ago I set these boundaries because it's kind of too late now.
Yeah. And I think that, to go off what you said, in our romantic relationships today, popular culture has so much influence in just like boundaries are non existent. And like when we are having a Christian romantic relationship, I think the first thing that you should do is set boundaries, because yes, God forgives your sins, but the Bible also talks about he will let you run yourself into a ditch until you decide that you've had enough and you put down the shovel and call out to him and he will come and save you. But he's not going to hold your hand while you're committing these sins. Like, you will feel it and you will know in your spirit and your soul and your mind and your physical body as well that what you're doing, the boundaries that you're breaking, are wrong. So I just think that it's important. Like, this advice is so important to have boundaries in your relationships.
Okay, to end our amazing podcast episode, that I think there's a lot of information we were giving out,
Yeah.
a lot of personal advice. But what advice would you give someone either starting a new friendship or relationship or something?
Yeah. For a friendship, I would just say to choose who you surround yourself with wisely. My filter for friendships is always that I should have a younger friend that I can give advice to, friends who are on the same level as me so that we can walk life together, and friends who can give me advice and who are above me, so kind of like mentors. Um, that's always the filter that I have. If you are outside of those three categories, then I'm so sorry. I cannot. Like, I will not. I'll be kind and I'll be civil, and I'll be polite, but I'm not going to actively pursue a friendship with that person. For relationships, I would just say that number one, God comes first. Make sure that your relationship is God centered and not pop culture love centered. And I say that boundaries are a must.
We haven't said it enough.
Yeah, boundaries are just a must. Pop culture relationships will tell you to kiss all the time and make cute comments and that it's okay to have passion drive your relationship. Do not give into that lie. Do not buy into that. Ground your relationship on a firm foundation of truth and see how far it will take you both. Um, Number two, make sure that the person you are dating is on your level. I cannot stress this enough. You also need to look at the fruit of their life and see if they would be a good partner for you. Obviously, pray and seek guidance about this decision, and don't just dive into it. Like, don't go into a relationship thinking, oh, this is the one. Go into the relationship thinking, okay, I'm making a new friend. Is this friend going to be my best friend? Is this friend worthy of me pursuing a relationship with them? Is this friend good enough for me by God's standards to marry and to spend the rest of my life with? So definitely pray and seek guidance, external guidance, before coming to that conclusion.
Yeah, I would say for relationships, it don't go all in with the person relationship wise. Like if you've only known each other for like a week and you want to start being boyfriend or girlfriend, don't.
Yeah.
Become friends first. Give it like a at least a month or so. Just don't go all in because you don't fully know the person yet. So when you're in a relationship, it's harder to know a new fact about them. Like what if you figure out something about them and you absolutely hate it?
Yeah.
Well, that's why you should have become friends first, so it would be easier to end a friendship than it is a breakup.
Yeah.
Also, we are always here to if you want to email us or something for advice, but we're not gonna always be here. Like we can
Yeah.
go out and get coffee. So find someone either in your church or a mentor who is in a relationship or who has been in a relationship, to ask for advice for. Like, hey, girly, me and my boyfriend are doing this. Is it okay? Does it align with the Bible?
Yeah.
Um,
Also, make sure these people are women,
yeah,
or the same sex as you, because a guy cannot speak into a girl's life,
yeah,
a girl's perspective, and a girl cannot speak into a guy's life from a guy's perspective.
because we struggle with different things. And then for friends, really pray and determine whether or not what category you think they would go into. There's definitely have been people that are older than me, but I mentor them, and people who are younger than me that almost mentor me in a way. I'm like, dang, this she's 13 and she's as wise as I am spiritually, and but just make sure that same with relationships, don't go all in and determine they're gonna be your best friend only after a couple days of knowing them, and then they end up to be spiritually lower than you
Mm-hmm.
and then you have to like bring them up to your level because that just takes a lot of time and effort. Um, just be their mentor instead, besides their best friend.